We welcome you to hour number 2 of this Tuesday, live right here on the early line. Maybe it's a Tuesday in the calendar, but it's the final day of 2024. New Year's Eve is what we call it, or in other words, a day, read the shirt once again, for college football, period. Yeah, that's right. 5 college football games at the FBS level on this final day of 2024. 4 in bowl season and our 5th and final to ring in a new year. It's the start of the quarterfinal round of the college football playoff. The Fiesta Bowl tonight out in the desert between the 3-seed Boise State and the 6-seed Penn State. Joe, so much to get to here in this second hour. We set the stage for the final 8 teams still in the chase for a national championship in the first ever 12-team college football playoff. We will also talk more about the NFL, getting you ready for week number 18. Golf season starts this Saturday on the PGA Tour. Saturday starts this Thursday on the PGA Tour with the Century Championship out on the Hawaiian Islands. Keith Stewart will be back on the show. So much to get into here in this second hour.
Yeah, a little something for everyone, Ben, as we look to turn the page on 2024, welcome in 2025. Exciting stuff. And we still have, 4 weeks of college football, 3 weeks. So I'm all for it. Let's go.
We're not done, man. 3 weeks from yesterday is the national championship game. There's a lot of time now in the biggest field and the most teams with the most wins necessary to claim a national championship in college football in the history of this sport. So thus, history continues on this Tuesday night, on New Year's Eve, to ring in 2025 before a triple header of CFP action comes your way tomorrow on New Year's Day. It is New Year's Eve. It is a party. That will be the case out in Glendale, Arizona, for the Fiesta Bowl between Penn State and Boise State. It's the first game of the quarterfinal round. There you see the matchups. It starts with the Fiesta Bowl tonight. Then we go to the Peach Bowl in Atlanta. Arizona State and Texas, our largest spread of the CFP quarterfinal round. And then 2 heavyweight showdowns to end out New Year's Day. The granddaddy of them all, the rematch between Oregon and Ohio State in a Sugar Bowl in the Big Easy. Would love to visit that city sometime, between Georgia and Notre Dame. What a round we have in this historic bracket, the first ever 12-team college football playoff. Joe, I think the natural question as we look at the bracket, after we saw blowouts in our 4 opening round games, every game decided by at least 2 touchdowns. On campus for the first time, where home teams took advantage, home teams booked as a favorite, everybody laying at least a touchdown, in those home favorites were a perfect 4-0 against the spread with an average margin of victory of 19.3 points per game. So again, I think the natural question begs, will the quarterfinal round be closer, including our first 2 games starting tonight in the Fiesta Bowl?
Yeah. Unfortunately, they won't. And I think they won't here, Ben, because we've talked about it. I mean, listen, I do think you have 12 teams that deserve to be there, the most deserving. I still would like to get to a situation where we just have the 12 best teams in the country, but that's going to take a little time. And I think that this is where the seeding comes into play, Ben, because much like what we talked about last week in the blowouts and how is Ohio State an 8 seed, and that's what you get Oregon for being the number 1 seed at this point.
Yeah.
I think they will eventually get the seeding correctly. But until then, we've got blowouts ready to go here. I mean, there are levels to this, Ben. We've talked about it, right? The SMUs of the world are not the Penn States of the world. And Boise State, once again, great year, deserving to be here. Number 3 seed, but congratulations. Your gift is that you get to take on the number 5 defense in the nation. And yeah, you're going to get blown out like most teams usually do, who are not of this caliber here. I mean, Penn State's averaging 38 points a game here, Ben. The offense is humming. They're great stacking the box up against the run. I don't think Boise State can compete, but I do think they can score enough to help us get this thing flying over the total at the Fiesta Bowl. Most Fiesta Bowls are usually shootouts. I don't think this one's going to be any different, only I think Penn State will eventually cover this game, but I think we fly over the total as well.
And that's been a big part of it as well, Joe. For a Nittany Lions team, when expected to win a game under James Franklin, they often do, and they are pretty darn good. I caution everybody, please, 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 it's probably not going to work with some of the takes that we will see tonight on social media. But remember how the college football playoff has always played out. Even our semifinal games in the 10-year history of the 4-team format of the CFP were decided on average by 17.9 points per game, with only 7 of the 20 even decided by a single score. Our national championship games in the decade of the CFP, the two best teams in college football squaring off, decided by 21.4 points per game, with half of them decided by at least 3 touchdowns. Blowouts in this unique and wacky sport of college football, even at the upper echelon, have happened, do happen, and will continue to happen. Now, Joe, to your point on fixing the format, we've already been seeing reports, namely from Action Network's Brett McMurphy yesterday, that the College Football Playoff Committee and the College Football Playoff Board of Governors, if you will, is already considering a change to this format for next year, where you would still guarantee bids to the college football playoff for the 5 highest ranked conference champs. So you would have that group of 5 input and making sure you get at least one ACC and Big 12 team into this field, but not necessarily opening round buys for the 4 highest ranked conference champs. I think we can all agree that's pretty good. I think some of those teams like Arizona State and Boise State, or maybe even Clemson, whoever earns those automatic bids to the college football playoff, might rather host an on-campus game than play in a bowl game where they're still catching double digits. That would be just my estimation. I do think this quarterfinal round will be closer, and I think we're certainly going to see that in our final 2 games tomorrow night, that being Oregon and Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, and Georgia and Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl. Both spreads, 2.5 points in favor of the Buckeyes, 1.5 points now only in favor of Georgia. So let's start with the Fiesta Bowl. We'll go game by game. We'll break all of this down where we see things fit throughout our next 3 hours. But, Joe, it just should be noted that when you look at these spreads, we've got 2 that are at least double digits, and we've got 2 that is less than a field goal. Boise State is catching 11.5 from Penn State tonight in the Fiesta Bowl out in Glendale, Arizona.
And I just think it's a terrible matchup here for Boise State, because the defense of Penn State allowing 279 yards of total offense a game, allowing barely 100 yards per game rushing, which is the strength of Boise State. I think it's simple. Shut down Ashton Genty, and guess what? Boise State's going to have a hard time in this game. I think the defensive side of the ball is the big difference maker. Penn State, number 5 offense in the country, and the offense averaging 38 a game here, Ben. They can run, they can throw with efficiency. This game could get out of hand in a hurry. And by the way, Penn State and Franklin will not take their foot off the gas in any way, shape, or form if given the opportunity.
They don't do that, but Boise State is very familiar with this setting out in the desert in Arizona. They have played in 3 previous Fiesta Bowls, including one of the great upsets this sport has ever seen back to start 2007. More from the College Football Playoff next. Your College Football Playoff quarterfinal preview live right here on New Year's Eve on the early line on SportsGrid. We start the quarters tonight at the Fiesta Bowl. It's the 3 seed Boise State, the champions of the Mountain West, taking on the 6 seed Penn State. That would be James Franklin's Nittany Lions. Boise has only been an underdog once this year. They were catching 3 scores inside Austin Stadium against the Ducks. Of course, they kept that game incredibly close. Oregon needed a last-second field goal to escape with a win. Ashton Genty, 192 yards on the ground that day against the Ducks. needs only a $132 tonight to break Barry Sanders' record. Now, again, I just have to say this as a student of history of college football. Barry Sanders rushed for 2,628 yards in 11 games in 1988. If you add on even the bowl game for the Pokes, that record is 2850. So, yeah, Ashton Jeanty in his 14th game of the year could catch Barry tonight, but know what the actual record is. Not discrediting Ashton Jeanty. He has had a historic season. He is going to end more than likely with the second most rushing yards in a single season in the history of college football. Joe, now we go to our next game in the quarterfinal round. It also features double digits. That is Arizona State in the Peach Bowl, the champions of the Big 12, earning that opening round bye, taking on the top at-large team, the runner-ups in the SEC. That would be Texas. Texas was the largest favorite of the opening round, laying 2 touchdowns at close against Clemson. Texas is the largest favorite in the quarterfinal round, laying 12.5 points against the Sun Devils. Texas covered, winning by 14 against Clemson in the opening round. Might the Longhorns do the same here in the quarterfinal round?
I hate the matchup, Farrah. I think it's just a terrible matchup for the Sun Devils. Now, Clemson, to their credit, Klubnik there, they could throw the ball, and that's how they ended up moving the ball on Texas. Arizona State is all about running it with Scatterbo. Texas, 10th in the country against the rush, allowing 104.2 rushing yards per game. The 13 teams that the Sun Devils have faced this season have an average total defensive rank of 76. Texas is the 3rd ranked defense in the country overall. And by the way, Jordan Tyson not playing, the number 1 receiver here for Arizona State, which means how are you beating them? And they can't get pressure on Quinn Ewers. We all saw Quinn Ewers is a different quarterback if you can get into his face. That's not what the Sun Devils defensively do. They rank 100th in the country in sacks per game. Everything here points to this being advantage Texas. If they can't run on this Texas defense, this game is also a blowout, unfortunately.
So Clemson threw for 336 against the Longhorns in Austin in the opening round. Texas entered that game allowing just 146 passing yards per. They were the best secondary in all of college football. I do believe that Arizona State is going to have to run the football effectively. And I think they have the guy in Cam Scatterbo who can do exactly that. I also believe they have the head coach in Kenny Dillingham that came to ASU after being the offensive play caller at Oregon that will design a scheme to keep this game close. I do think Arizona State can stay within this number, but that's a big if on Cam Scatterbo having the game of his life. He's had 7 of 12 games that he's played in this year for ASU where he has had at least 180 scrimmage yards. He will need that and then some against Texas. Arizona State's doing a lot of talking. Don't love that because Texas is sitting there and saying, what a great year for the Sun Devils. We wish them the best. That is what you say before you bludgeon somebody when you know they are better, when you are better than them. I will just say, double-digit spreads in our first 2 games, less than a field goal in our final 2. Oregon and Ohio State in the rematch in the Rose Bowl. Your classic Pac-12 Big Ten matchup in Pasadena under the San Gabriel Mountains. 2.5-point spread in favor of Ohio State. The Sugar Bowl in the nightcap on New Year's Day out in New Orleans. Joe is basically becoming a pick'em before our very eyes. It opened briefly with Notre Dame as a slight favorite. It quickly flipped to Georgia as the favorite. They laid as many as 2.5. You can see it there. It is a pick'em right now on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Joe, of those 2 games, the Rose between Oregon and Ohio State, the Sugar between Georgia and Notre Dame, which game is closer and more competitive?
They're both serious coin flip games, Ben. It's kind of crazy. I do think in both of those games, totals are probably where the value is. Good luck trying to trying to keep the scoring down between Oregon and Ohio State. In fact, I'd even look at the first half over, given the amount of time Oregon's had to prep for this game, and given the way Ohio State came out firing against Tennessee. They're going to need to do that again. Ohio State doesn't want to have to come from behind like they did in the first game the entire day. I would look at the first half over as well, but to me, ultimately, it's going to come down to the final 2-3 minutes, just like the first one did. Hopefully, there'll be a lot more points, and we have already cashed the over in it. But I do think Notre Dame has a really good chance here of walking away with a victory and possibly playing for a national championship. They're the dog I would look at if they're even considered a dog at this point.
So when you look at those national championship odds, it's a 6-1 price on Notre Dame to win that title, improving because it is basically a pick'em. Joe, we have 8 teams left in the hunt for that national championship in the college football playoff. Before we start the quarterfinals tonight, who would you bet on to win a national championship?
I don't mind Notre Dame. I really don't. I think that they're kind of the forgotten ones here. And while everyone loves the SEC and the Big Ten, yeah, I would pay attention to Notre Dame. And I think they should actually roll Georgia, I think, rather easily in this one.
It will be interesting. Gunnar Stockton makes his first career start for Georgia with a rush defense outside of the Texas game that has been as bad as we have seen in Athens in the last 5 years. More on the early line up next. We welcome you to hour number 3, our third and final, not only of this Tuesday, but can you believe it? A full year on the early line. It is our last hour of TEL in 2024. Who better to bring it and ring it in than Joe Ranieri, that guy right there, and myself, Ben Stevens. What better way to end out a calendar year than with a ton of college football and college basketball on this New Year's Eve Tuesday. We've got 5 bowl games that includes the start of the quarterfinal round of the college football playoff, the Fiesta Bowl tonight between Boise State and Penn State. We'll get your thoughts on that in just a few moments. We'll look at our CFP triple header tomorrow on New Year's Day to kick off 2025. We'll have John Rothstein join us later in this third and final hour for an assessment of the college basketball slate on this Tuesday. Big 12 openers across the board and a couple of Big East battles early on in conference action. So much to get to, Joe Ranieri, here in this third and final hour of 2024.
A little something for everyone here, Ben, coming up as we say goodbye to 2024. And, yeah, let's not forget college hoops, big part of what's happening as we turn the calendar.
There is no doubt about it. And, Joe, college basketball will be a big portion starting in 2025, even on this final day of the year. Conference action really picks up. And I know a lot of people love those non-conference early season tournaments, but for some that are perhaps a tad more casual, you want to focus on good teams versus good teams. We will get that night in, night out in conference action in college basketball. And we'll still get that during bowl season. And certainly we hope in the quarterfinal round of the college football playoff that begins tonight out in Arizona. It's the Fiesta Bowl between the champions of the Mountain West, the 3 seed in Boise State, and the 6 seed in Penn State. But that higher seed is not the favorite. In fact, it's the Nittany Lions laying double digits. So how do we approach betting the Fiesta Bowl? We wanted to hear from all of you. It's time now for Fade the Public. The start of the first game of the quarterfinal round in the first ever 12-team college football playoff. What is the best bet for the final football game in 2024? Tonight's quarterfinal matchup between Penn State and Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. Is it the Nittany Lions as now an 11.5-point favorite? Is it Boise State as the double-digit underdog in a familiar and comfortable setting at the Fiesta Bowl for the Broncos? Is it the over 53.5, or might we stay under that number of 53 and a hook? Most of the public back in the Broncos as a double-digit dog. Boise State plus 11.5 at 35 But, Joe, in the early returns of this voting, we're closing in on 200 votes here on this Tuesday morning. But in the first 75 to 100, it was all Boise State. 56% of the vote back in the Broncos as the dog. We have seen more Penn State love throughout this morning. How are you approaching the Fiesta Bowl? Are you fading the public?
Yeah, unfortunately, I am fading the public here, Ben, because I do think there are levels to this. And much like SMU learned, Boise State is going to learn. They are not on the same level as a Penn State in college football. Heck of a season, doesn't take away from anything that they've accomplished. But when you want to talk about strength of schedule, when you want to talk about the wins and who they've played, it's not even close here, Ben. The quality of the Mountain West, not exactly the same quality as the Big Ten delivers here. And I think Penn State, much like SMU, they will learn rather quickly in this game that, yes, when things can go off the rails, they go off quickly. And Penn State, I think, will win this game rather easily. And I hope Boise State has some success, Ben, because I do need this thing to fly over the total as well.
I do think that is a really strong look, Joe. Of that total of 53.5, Penn State, of course, stayed under in its opening round game against SMU because that defense was dominant and scored 14 points as well, with two of those opening half pick sixes against the Mustangs. But Penn State in its final four Big Ten games, all to the over. In fact, Penn State's offense in its first five Big Ten games, averaging just slightly better than 24 points per game. In its final five, including the Big Ten title game against Oregon, and if you add in that opening round game in State College against the Stangs, Penn State is averaging better than 38 points per game. The offense has been so much better. Of course, 14 of the 38 against SMU was scored by the defense. Dominic DeLuca, two of those opening three first-half picks, and Tony Rojas, an INT return for a touchdown against Kevin Jennings and the Mustangs as well. Boise State started this year, Joe, playing to the over in 5 consecutive games. They have gone under much more frequently down the tail end of their season. But you might be thinking, well, Boise State in its first 5 games were playing a lot of non-conference matchups. You are correct, including the game against Oregon, the only game for the Broncos as a dog this year, also getting double digits, not just double digits, but 18.5 points when they covered against the Ducks, losing by only a last-second field goal, 37-34. And I want to make a point here, Joe, that I think was maybe slightly lost in the opening round. Often from the betting perspective, from that handicapping outlook, when you think about an underdog, especially a double-digit underdog, keeping a game close and trying to stay within margin, the natural thought, it's just simple arithmetic, is that if you are going to cover a number as a hefty dog, the total must stay under, right? Just follow me here. If there is a lack of available points, if there's only 30 points in a game, the chance for Penn State to cover by 12 plus is much more limited than if there's 70 points and Penn State scores 40, right? Because that would mean Boise State is struggling to keep pace. I find it the complete opposite here in college football in these lopsided matchups that we have seen, as we saw with SMU and Indiana against Notre Dame. The underdog's best chance of covering is to push the game to an over, because the Broncos need to score offensively against one of the best defenses in the sport, led by Tom Allen there in State College, to keep this game close. If Ashton Genty, Maddox Madsen, and Boise State's offense can get to the 20s, that is their best chance of covering the number and maybe pulling off the outright upset against the Penn Staters tonight.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I mean, while that game went under against SMU, it was at Happy Valley in less than ideal conditions. That will not be a problem in this game tonight. So I agree with you. I think Boise State, who did have some success against that Oregon defense, albeit very early in the season here until, of course, Oregon figured some things out. But absolutely a possibility here. And Penn State, with how they've been, you bring in the offensive coordinator from Kansas, and boy, oh boy, 38 points on average over the last 4 games. I can absolutely see Penn State putting up close enough to that. The question is, do we think Boise State's got enough in the tank to be able to go toe for a little while and get this thing over? I think you do.
There is a reason, by the way, that Penn State is sensational in games they are expected to win. Where they fall flat is as an underdog. We can have that conversation perhaps in the semifinal round. But as a favorite, 40 games since the start of 2022, Penn State is one of 5 FBS programs that has won double-digit games each of the last 3 seasons. So in that span, they have been booked as a favorite 34 times in 40 total games. They are 33-1 straight up in 24-9-1 against the spread. Both the best win in cover percentage as a favorite among power conference programs. More from the college football playoff up next. We continue to preview the quarterfinal round of the college football playoff. It starts tonight out in Glendale, Arizona at the Fiesta Bowl between the 3-seed Boise State and the 6-seed Penn State. The Nittany Lions, again, an 11.5-point favorite. Our total stands at 53 and a hook. One final point on this game, just so you see the number. 127.5 is the rushing yards prop of Ashton Jeanty. He needs 132 yards to break Barry Sanders' single-season rushing yards record that Barry set back at Oklahoma State in 1988 in only 11 games. This is game number 14 this season for Jeanty and the Broncos. Just something to pay attention to. And Joe, Penn State ended out the year as a top 10 rushing defense in the sport, only allowing 103 yards per game. And somehow, some way, they got even better in that opening round matchup against SMU, allowing just 58 yards on 36 carries. Brashard Smith is not Ashton Jeanty. That's SMU's running back, but he's not bad. All to say, Penn State's front is elite. That's how Boise State keeps this game close, though. If Ashton Jeanty makes history in the offense, looks the part tonight against Penn State's defense. Now, let's go to our final quarterfinal game, our last of 3 on a triple-header New Year's Day slate starting tomorrow. We go in reverse chronological order because we go to the heavyweight bouts to end things out. It's the 2-seed Georgia, the champions of the SEC, the 7-seed Notre Dame. And now, on the FanDuel Sportsbook, it is a basic pick'em. When you look at these numbers, Georgia is still a slight 1.5 favorite. The updated odds on the money line, minus 111 in slight favor of UGA, but it's minus 108 on the other side for the Fighting Irish. It is our lowest total of the quarterfinal round in the college football playoff, 45 and a hook. Joe, how do you break down the Sugar Bowl in the Big Easy between Georgia and Notre Dame?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because even at a close to pick 'em price there, Ben, we're also looking at one of the lowest totals, right? 45 and a half is what we're looking at here. And I got to tell you, it wasn't the final score was very indicative of Notre Dame easily handling Indiana. But the thing I looked at was Notre Dame ran for 193 yards in that game, but 98 of those came on one touchdown run by Jeremiah Love. So 34 other attempts, and they barely totaled 95 yards. 2.8 yards per carry. That ain't going to work. And we know Indiana was very good against the run, although lesser competition. But Georgia is going to make sure they stop the run, which means Notre Dame's success is going to ride on their arm of Riley Leonard here. He was not asked to do a lot through the air this season. In fact, I think 326 total pass attempts is all he had this year. I think Georgia is going to force him to have to be the guy that beats him. Look at his passing yard prop, 175 and a half yards. This game is this low of a total for a reason. And if we're being honest, I think this number is too high. Between these two defenses, backup quarterback and Gunnar Stockton, and it's going to be who in the trenches can run the ball better. Whoever does is going to win this game. I still think Notre Dame's the better rushing team, and I think that is what's going to win them this game, and the under hits as well.
6 of the last 8 for Riley Leonard. He has gone over this number of 175.5. But his season high is not 330. It's 229 against a putrid Stanford defense trying to defend the pass as well. He had 3 passing touchdowns in that game. Joe, you are correct. Riley Leonard is going to be key. But so too are his legs, the legs of Jeremiah Love, the legs of Jadarian Price as well. Why do I say that? Because Georgia is the worst rushing defense we have seen in Athens this year since 2018. They allow 128 rushing yards per game. Perhaps you could look at things from 2 different lenses, if you will. Georgia at its best is what we saw against Texas in each of those 2 matchups, in the regular season and the SEC championship game. Or are those games the outliers? It's been an interesting season for the Georgia Bulldogs. 13 games. They have beaten 4 ranked teams, all that have played in the college football playoff. In those games, against the best competition, against the competition they will need to beat once again to win a 3rd national championship in the last 4 years, Georgia is perfect. 4-0 straight up, 4-0 against the spread. Against the other 9 teams on the docket, not a single cover for UGA this season. And Joe, they only allowed 60 total rushing yards. Total in 2 games against Texas. 55 attempts for the Longhorns, 1.1 yard per carry. That was it. But Notre Dame is a better rushing offense than that of Texas, 10th best in the country, averaging 222 yards per game. But injuries, a story entering the Sugar Bowl as well. We'll talk about Carson Beck not playing in the college football playoff and what we can anticipate out of Gunnar Stockton, but also for Notre Dame. Jeremiah Love has not been a full 100% despite 98 yards on the ground and that break-off touchdown early against Indiana. And Riley Mills, one of the better defensive linemen in the sport, injured in the opening round matchup against IU, will miss the remainder of the CFP for the Fighting Irish. Now let's get to Georgia. Gunnar Stockton is the starter. It is his first career start for UGA. Outside of the second half in the SEC title game against Texas, only 2 other appearances this season, Joe, against UMass and Tennessee Tech. Against the 3rd best passing defense in the country, what can we anticipate out of Gunnar Stockton against Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl?
I don't know, Ben. I mean, not much is known about him. He's had a total of 62 dropbacks in his college career, and 20 of those came against Texas in the SEC championship. So he completed 12 passes for a little over, about 4.5 yards per attempt. He did throw an interception that almost cost him the game. So they're not exactly a great, efficient running team. He's going to have to make plays, and that's whether or not you trust him or not to put your money on him, because it's going to come down to him making some plays in this game.
Yep, no doubt it will. He is the biggest X factor for the Sugar Bowl and the college football playoff. The granddaddy of them all. Next. A New Year's Day triple header in the college football playoff. Exactly how it should be. Every new year should start with a day chock full of college football games, especially those that are significant now in the quarterfinal round of the CFP. In every New Year's Day should feature the granddaddy of them all. Under the San Gabriel Mountains in Pasadena, California, it's the Rose Bowl between number 1 Oregon and number 8 Ohio State. The top team, the only undefeated FBS program this season, the 13-0 Oregon Ducks, the champions of the Big Ten in Oregon's first year in the conference, now take on, once again, in league in a quarterfinal in the college football playoff. The rematch of an outstanding game, one of the best games of this college football regular season, back in October at Oregon, inside Autzen Stadium, where Will Howard slid just a tad too late, and the Ducks handed Ohio State a 1-point defeat, 32-31. Oregon winning outright as a home 3.5-point underdog. They're still getting points in this matchup against Ohio State, but now fewer than a field goal at 2.5. Joe, a 1-point game in game number 1 between the Buckeyes and the Ducks. How many points will game number 2 at the Rose Bowl be decided by?
It would be very difficult to sit here and be like, oh, yeah, I'm going to sweat out an under in this game. Listen, we already saw this game in Oregon and earlier in the year, and Oregon averaged over close to 7.5 yards a play in that game. And you know what? Ohio State offensively wasn't that far behind there. There were a couple of turnovers by the Buckeyes. I think Judkins fumbled at one point early in that game.
Yeah.
So they ended up giving Oregon a couple of extra possessions in which they made count against Ohio State. I mean, all things being equal, I don't know that we're going to get anything different than what we got in the first game here. Ohio State, arguably the best defense in college football right now, certainly statistically. Yeah. Their defense is better than Oregon State's. However, Dylan Gabriel, advantage him over. I'm not taking anything away from what Ohio State did against Tennessee. I thought that was great. They came out, punched him in the mouth, and the rest was history here. But if Ohio State's going to win this game, they've got to win it on the back of their defense here. So I think if you think Ohio State wins, lay it, no problem. But I would also then fade the Oregon team total because it's the defense that has to have the day in order to beat Dylan Gabriel in this Oregon offense. Still think it goes over, but I would fade one of the team totals here depending on who you think wins this game.
54.5 was the total for the original game, 32-31. The Ducks victorious over that number. Oregon outright as an underdog. The only time the Ducks were a dog all year long. In fact, in the now 3 years with Dan Lanning in Eugene, Oregon's only been a dog 4 times. They're not great. The only outright victory against these Ohio State Buckeyes back in October. In fact, Joe, when you think about the over in this matchup, Oregon has been less than a 21-point favorite 7 games this year. They have gone over that number 6 of 7 times in those games, going over the pregame total 6 of 7 times. In the 3 matchups, the Ducks have played against college football playoff teams over in every one. Boise State, Ohio State, Penn State in the Big Ten championship game. Ohio State has played 4 college football playoff teams. Over in 3 of 4, the only under in Happy Valley against the Nittany Lions back in the regular season. And Joe, to your point about Jim Knowles' defense, Ohio State allowed 32 points against Oregon. They gave up 116 total points in their other 11 football games, now make it 12 with Tennessee the remainder of this season. They are allowing fewer than 10 points per game in the 12 games not against Will Stein and this Oregon offense. All these things to pay attention to for the granddaddy of them all. We'll look at the props for the Rose Bowl on the other side of the break and the Peach Bowl in Atlanta that begins our triple header of the college football playoff on New Year's Day up next. The player props for the Rose Bowl and the granddaddy of them all in the college football playoff quarterfinal round, Oregon and Ohio State. Joe, there was so much offense the first time these two teams met up back in Eugene in early October. In fact, here's how much offense we saw. 963 total yards between the two sides in 63 total points. 32-31, the victory for the Ducks outright as an underdog. I think you could argue, Joe, and I think it would be a very fair assessment, that it was the best game for either quarterback throughout the entirety of this college football season, both throwing for more than 320 yards. That's Will Howard for Ohio State and Dylan Gabriel for Oregon, in both 3 total touchdowns, 2 through the air, 1 utilizing their legs as well. And look how similar the numbers are for tomorrow's Rose Bowl in Pasadena.
Kind of crazy, isn't it, Ben? I mean, it just feels like What we saw is what we are going to get. And the question is, can Ohio State, who had a couple of very costly penalties and 2 turnovers, not to mention a failed onside kick, can they clean that up? Because if they didn't have those things in that game, Ben, chances are Ohio State was the winner of that game, and doesn't really matter. The market is telling you they think they should be the favorite in this game as well. I do worry about Dan Lanning having extra time. He does seem in these spots to have his team ready to go. I don't see a letdown. I definitely think all of those props there, they're all poised for overs across the board, Ben. There's no way around it. Dylan Gabriel, 270, 275. Will Howard is going to have to pass. Trayvon Henderson, by the way, 52.5 rushing yards, feels light given the fact that Oregon's biggest weakness defensively is they can't stop the run. We saw Penn State run all over them. We saw Boise State run all over them. Maybe that's the biggest area of concern for that Oregon defense, in which Henderson can actually take advantage of.
80 and 2 touchdowns for TreVeyon Henderson against Tennessee, and the Volunteers' rushing defense much better than that of Oregon. Joe, to your point, the Ducks allowed more than 530 yards to Penn State in that Big Ten title game, nearly 300 of that on the ground. But Ohio State has had some issue against the most elite rush offenses they have seen this year. Jordan James had more than 100 in the opening game against Ohio State back in early October inside Autzen Stadium. It is going to be sensational. That I can guarantee for the Rose Bowl tomorrow in Pasadena at around 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. Later than that, because the game starts at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Around 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, out there in California, as the sun starts to set on the first day of 2025 over the San Gabriel Mountains. That is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. The first game, Joe, is in Atlanta. It's the Peach Bowl between the champions of the Big 12. That's Arizona State, the 4 seed. Last year's champions in the Big 12. And this year's runner-up in the SEC. It's the top at-large team and our national championship favorites entering the quarters. That would be the 5 seed, Texas. As we said earlier, Texas was the largest favorite in the opening round at close, a 13.5-point spread against Clemson. They won by 14. They covered. Texas is the largest favorite in the quarterfinal round, right now a 12.5-point number. Will the game be more competitive than what the odds expect for the first game of 3 tomorrow in the college football playoff quarterfinals?
This game is all about the matchups here right now. And Arizona State, I believe, has a very clear path here, Ben. If they're going to win this game, they're going to have to do it without their leading receiver, who's out, and they're going to have to rely on Scatterbo, who was their everything in this game. I think Texas is going to force redshirt freshman Sam Leavitt there, the QB. I think they're going to force him to have to beat them over the top. And you had mentioned we're talking about a top 3 or 4 passing defense here in Texas, although they did give up a bunch of yards and points there to Clemson in that last game. But my goodness, they are going to defensively to Sun Devils. They're going to have to pick their poison as well. We've seen the Longhorns have a lot of success on the ground, and that's not going to be good. If that defense is on the field a lot, that's not a good sign for Arizona State. Ultimately, I think that it's just a terrible matchup here for Arizona State. I might even look to fade their team total here and think, yeah, maybe Arizona State a little less success offensively, especially, Ben, what is the layoff factor in for you here?
Right.
What is the factor that they haven't played a game in a while offensively? Does that help or hurt a team like Arizona State? I think that's the interesting part. It would be Texas or pass for me, but I wouldn't at all be opposed to looking at the under in this game as well.
Arizona State is the best rushing defense in the Big 12. They only allow 117.5 yards per game. Texas is better than that. Texas is the best passing defense in the country, the second best scoring defense in the country, the third best total defense in the country. Joe, if this game stays under, Arizona State is going to lose, and by more than 2 touchdowns. Arizona State and Cam Scatterbo, your favorite running back's favorite running back, needs to have the game of his life offensively. There has been a lot of chatter from ASU about how skilled they are. Sam Levitt, the Arizona State quarterback, saying he is out there to prove why he is the best signal caller in this matchup. Cam Scatterbo claiming that nobody in the country can stop him. And to his point, and even a little bit of Sam Levitt's, they might actually have a compelling case, especially for Scatterbo, who in 12 games played this year for the Sun Devils, he has had at least 180 scrimmage yards in 7 of the 12. But, Joe, if he's going to, or if Arizona State is going to stay close, he's over 99.5 rushing yards. Has to be without a shadow of a doubt. You could look at his rushing plus receiving yards prop as well. That is how Arizona State stays in this football game. And even if they stay in the football game, I'm not sure there's an outright upset here as a double-digit dog. The Longhorns are the national championship favorites, and I think we see why with the reason they will show in the Peach Bowl in Atlanta, where, by the way, Texas played in its last game just under a month ago in that SEC championship against Georgia.
Again, there's a very clear path for Arizona State in this one. So the execution has to be there. And I think what Texas has to guard against more than anything else, Ben, is keeping Arizona State in this game because of turnovers or because of, self-inflicted wounds here. And I think that's the biggest thing with Texas. It's always kind of been the biggest thing when they get to this point in the season, right? We saw it last year against Washington. They got to avoid giving Arizona State an opportunity to win this game late. That's why I think you're going to see a full on-court press early and often for Texas in this one.
And when you look at Arizona State, Joe, you have mentioned it. Quinn Ewers has not been fully healthy. The rest after the SEC championship game and now over a week and a half before they will play tomorrow after handling Clemson should be a benefit. But Arizona State's not great at getting after the quarterback. Only 21 sacks this season. They are good up front in slowing down the run. They are not great about pressuring quarterbacks like Quinn Ewers. If he has time to pick that secondary apart, and we know Isaiah Bond is back now for the Longhorns. He did not play in the opening round game against the Tigers. That's going to be very difficult for ASU to manage. Will one of the double-digit games stay within the number? I certainly hope so. Joe Ranieri, this is where we bid you adieu. A very happy new year, my friend. You'll be on Game Time Decisions later. Hardest working man in the SportsGrid. Thank you. More on the early line next.